wishing all women and girls out there a very happy Women's Day. I'd like to thank the distinguished panelists, guests, and of course, our dear viewers for attending the first session for today, which is called Diversity and Inclusion. I request all the panelists on screen to please be on mute while they're not speaking. This is just to avoid any echo. The attendees in the audience are requested to please type their questions in the chat box that you see on your screens. The moderator will ask your question to the panelist it has been addressed to. So don't forget to write the name of the panelist you're addressing the question to. Without further ado, please allow me to introduce our power-packed panel of leading ladies for this session. We have with us this morning Ms. Ishita Agarwal, Program Director, Atal Innovation Mission, Niti Aayog. Ishita has over 14 years of experience with focus on the early stage startup ecosystem. She has been directly responsible for design and implementation of institution building programs that nurture tech entrepreneurs with a view to democratize innovation and entrepreneurship in the country. Prior to Niti Aayog, she has worked with several business incubators in the public and private sector, bringing impact at scale. Thank you so much, Ishita, for joining us this morning. We also have with us Ms. Manju Dasmana, Director, Corporate Affairs, CSR, Microsoft. Manju has a leadership experience of over 19 years in civic and societal impact. She is a recipient of 100 Most Impactful CSR Leaders Award across development, diversity, gender outreach, and policy advocacy with a robust entrepreneurial expertise in social entrepreneurship development, project planning and implementation, last mile connectivity, government liaising, and developing talent capabilities aligned to business goals. She is adept at contributing ingenious strategic initiatives towards guidance of financial grant management, corporate citizenship strategy, community affairs, social compliances, NGO network with backing of professional specialization in capacity building, employability, skilling, communications, and operational excellence. Thanks, Manju. That's quite a lot. Just reading it out, it is taking me so long. And imagine your experience of 19 years. Kudos to you, Manju. Now we have with us Ms. Meera Shenoy, founder and CEO, Youth for Jobs. Meera ma'am is a pioneer in job-linked skilling of rural, tribal, and now youth with disabilities. She was Executive Director, EGMM, the first state government skilling mission, then consultant with World Bank and UNDP, and is now a change maker. She set up Youth for Jobs 9 years back, which has grown to be the largest organization in South Asia, skilling less educated and educated youth with disabilities, linking them to jobs. Youth for Jobs is a one-stop shop for 650 companies and has won the highest national and international awards, the most recent being Asia winner for their prestigious Future of Work, MIT Inclusion Innovation Challenge, and the Global Zero Project Award for innovations in IT and employment. She writes book runs, Not Just Art, a portal for art with disability. Her work is driven by compassion and a belief in the potential of the poor. She is inspired by Mahatma Gandhi's words, and I quote, "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others," unquote. Thank you, Meera ma'am. That quote is really beautiful. We have with us finally Ms. Shweta Rajpal Kohli, Head Public Policy, Sequoia Capital, India. Shweta is a Director and Head of Public Policy, Sequoia, India and Southeast Asia. She works with government stakeholders to craft policies that help accelerate the growth momentum of the startup ecosystem in India and Southeast Asia. She also advises portfolio companies on managing regulatory risks and unlocking new levers of growth. Prior to joining Sequoia, Shweta led government outreach and advocacy efforts for Salesforce and has also led a team of policy professionals at Uber across South Asia that engaged with policymakers on ride-sharing regulations and digital payments. Before joining the world of policy, Shweta spent 2 decades as a business journalist and TV news anchor, and was group business editor of India's leading broadcaster, NDTV. Shweta is a board member of WE Hub, an accelerator for women entrepreneurs set by the Telangana government. Shweta has completed mid-career programs from Wharton Business School, INSEAD Business School, and University of Westminster. And I'm sure many women and girls and others who are watching are able to recognize Shweta from the NDTV days. Thank you, all of you, for being part of this panel. I'd like to begin the panel discussion with the first question to Ishita. Ishita, could you please highlight some initiatives taken to promote women as entrepreneurs, especially in the tech startup ecosystem? And what measures can be taken to promote and strengthen entrepreneurs at the rural level? Ishita, over to you.
So thank you, Dr. Archana, for inviting us to this panel. And it's great, it's an honor and privilege to be with some other very, very accomplished women of the day. And I would, before getting into the response, I'd like to wish all the women here and the girls watching us a very, very happy International Women's Day. I do hope that everyone is able to achieve what they are wishing to do. Coming back to tech entrepreneurship in the country, let me start with my own organization, Atal Innovation Mission, which is for which I'm a co-founder, part of the founding team of Atal Innovation Mission, housed at the Government of India. Over here, what we do is Atal Innovation Mission has been given a mandate to encourage innovation and entrepreneurship in the country, and we do give a special focus and priority that so that women become, they are a part of all the initiatives that we do. To give you an example, we are in the process of setting up Atal Tinkering Labs in schools across the country, which is a place where the students can learn 21st century skill sets. They can learn how to code. They can not just code, but they can learn, make use of. They can learn about IoT. They can learn about creating domes. They can learn about artificial intelligence, self-study modules. But most importantly, skill sets like structured problem solving, design thinking are imparted in this Atal Tinkering Labs. And we have set up close to 7,000 tinkering labs across the country so far, and we will take this number up to 10,000 in the next quarter. But we've made sure that 70% of these Atal Tinkering Labs are located in schools that are which are either girls' schools or co-ed schools, so that the girl child, when she grows up, is empowered with these kind of skill sets, this knowledge that is required for her to become an innovator as she matures, and she's able to solve the problems of the community around her. Then we also are in the process of creating about 70 business incubators. We have made sure that wherever there are women-focused incubators, we have supported 3 of such incubators that are, either focused only on supporting women and entrepreneurs, or they have a strong bend towards women entrepreneurs. We are also, you also mentioned about entrepreneurship in the rural areas, and for that we are coming up with Atal Community Innovation Centers, which is about taking innovation to the unserved and the underserved regions of the country. And there again, we have a focus on women entrepreneurship and make sure that women are a part of this entire process. So on and so forth. Other than that, we have partnered with Head Start Network to launch the Kickstart version of Kickstart Women version for getting women entrepreneurs access to investors. We've worked with the Prosperity Lab, and there are various other initiatives that we keep doing to make sure that the women entrepreneurship gets enough impetus and gets enough recognition. Speaking of Larger Niti, there is the Women Entrepreneurship Platform that has been launched on an International Women's Day 3 years back by the CEO. The idea over there is to it has been launched as a strategic initiative to enable women across India to realize their entrepreneurship aspirations, and more than 18,000 women are now registered with us on this platform, which not only motivates women to become entrepreneurs, but also provides them the knowledge as well as the hands-on support to scale up their businesses. Niti Aayog has also launched the Women Transforming India Awards that recognizes exceptional women across India from both commercial and social sectors. Well, I could go on and on giving you more examples of how we've supported women entrepreneurs, but I'll take a pause right now and I'll let you continue with other questions as well, and I can talk more about the government policy measures in a bit.
Thanks so much, Ishita. It's so good to know that Niti Aayog is doing so much for women entrepreneurs, and I'm sure the panelists and the others would like to perhaps Google Niti Aayog to see what are the measures that have been undertaken by Niti Aayog and how they can associate themselves as far as entrepreneurship is concerned. Thanks, Ishita. We come to Manju. Manju, Microsoft, I know, is focusing a lot on diversity and inclusion across all its projects, and NSDC is also doing a project with Microsoft, so thanks for that. Can you share how you have been able to achieve this goal at the grassroots level? Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Archana. I think I echo Ishita that it's so amazing to be on this panel, with the other women leaders, and of course you, Dr. Archana, always so inspiring. So good to be here. It's a good way to, be on International Women's Day, and wishes to everybody who's watching. I haven't been, don't lynch me, I've not been a big fan of International Women's Day, because I believe that diversity and inclusion is in every moment. It's not something that you need to think about on a particular day. It is something that you have to remember every moment. But I've over the years really started enjoying, because there's so much of attention that comes to this subject. So yes, I'm happy to be here. So if I talk about Microsoft, you know that our mission statement is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And when you have that as a mission statement, then diversity and inclusion is not something that's good to do. That's fundamental to who you are as a business. So as a business, the message from leadership, from Satya, always is that diversity and inclusion is not an initiative. It's how we work. It's how our business processes are. It's who we partner with. It's how we hire. So it's part of everything that we do. But today, because I look at CSR, let me focus a bit more on what are we doing in that space, especially to reach the most underserved and marginalized. And I think in terms of the success that we've really achieved, and I do believe that over the last 5-6 years, we've moved very significantly on how we're enabling inclusion for persons with disabilities or young women and girls, particularly from tribal and rural areas. I would say that there is one factor, and I will divide it into sub-factors, that has been responsible for where we are and where we want to go. And I think the biggest part is partnerships. I think if nothing else, diversity and inclusion tells you that it's not something that only one person can do. It can only be done when you partner with others. And there are really 4 partnerships that I'll talk about. And I think first of all is organizations like Dr. Meera Shenoy's Youth for Job, the nonprofits that we partner with, because what they really do is help us get our resources, whether it's funding, our content, our certification, our technology, to the most underserved, because they're really the ones who are really at working with the last mile connectivity. So it's a very powerful way for us to partner with organizations which are already doing a lot of work. So we kind of strengthen and take from them, and we also contribute to them. So I think that's definitely has been a great success factor for us. So we have, other than Youth for Jobs, we work with organizations like Aga Khan, which is very focused on rural and tribal areas. Then we have other programs which are in the Northeast, again, through nonprofits. I think the second piece of this, Dr. Archana, really is partnering with government and institutions, because any scale and sustainability is only possible when you do that. So, when we partnered with NSDC, both with the 100K girls in digital skills, but with you to ensure that we are creating, we're also ensuring employment for them. So that's a big part. We also partner with Ministry of Labor and Employment, Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. We're looking at doing a partnership with Youth Affairs and too. So the idea is, how do we create, sustain and scale and not do silo programs? So that's the second part. I think the third part is, how are we using our voice as Microsoft to not just do these programs ourselves, but get like-minded corporate organizations to partner, right? So we have a program which is with State Bank of India to actually train persons with disability, young people with disabilities, for job roles in BFSI. right? And we are making sure that outside of SBI, the other BFSI partners, organizations are also part of this effort, right? So that's another way that we are really we're going to be soon announcing a partnership somewhere with another corporate partner I can't share right now, which is around AI skilling for girls who are in rural engineering colleges, right? So the idea is, how are we using our voice, our standing in the community, to get others to also join us, learn from them too, So that's the third. And I think the most important piece is, I always believe that diversity and inclusion is not a static concept. It changes. 6 years back, we used to talk about just if you can raise the participation of girls to 40% in your program, that was inclusion, right? Or if you actually had one program that was persons with disability, you say, oh, your CSR programs are inclusive. That has changed so much because people are demanding more, communities are demanding more. It changes. Their aspiration changes. So I think the last bit is how you partner with communities to evolve, grow, and just constantly struggle to find the next. So I would say that those are the ones that I'll just take a pause here that have been really successful for us.
Thanks, Manju. You made a very important point, and you said that diversity and inclusion is fundamental to who we are and what we do. So that is my takeaway for at least today on Women's Day. Thank you for sharing that. Meera ma'am, you have worked so extensively in the space of disability. Can you share with us how you've been able to increase the participation of people with disability in the country, and what steps did you take to achieve such high numbers?
First of all, like the others, let me just say it's lovely to be here. I believe that all of us are, happy women by a sheer accident of birth. And therefore, in this panel, let me focus on girls with disabilities who come from rural areas. I think girls from rural areas with disabilities have 4 burdens on their shoulders. They're a girl, they are disabled, they're poor, and they're from the rural areas. So what this means is, and the numbers are not small. I mean, if 69% of India is in the villages, 51% are women. You talk to them, and I do that quite often when I travel across India. What do they want? Their aspirations are, I want to go to school, I want to have qualifications and skills, I need a job, I need to be independent, loved, give love, just like what you and I want, Archana. But what is their status? In one of the blocks where we work, if the average education level is 57%, girls with disabilities received barely 8%. In the School of Visually Impaired Girl, the government school where we work, which was funded by Microsoft, it's really amazing. When the school opens, the teachers have to call them to come back to school because parents think it's a girl and she's visually impaired. Or they just want to leave them behind in the hostel and not take them back to school. So with these kind of issues which are surrounding them, little surprised are you that they're either underemployed or they are unemployed and looked at as one more mouth to feed. But I think the wonderful thing is that all of us in this panel and those who are listening to us are in the beautiful space where we can actually change this landscape. We can change this landscape by skilling them and linking them either to a job or an enterprise. If we need to do that, what do we really have to do? I think one is that it won't happen automatically. We really need to have focus in terms of our own approach and the policies which are being done. And therefore, I'm really happy to hear from Ishita what the Atal Innovation is doing. The second is, I think you need to put specific targets. For example, 9 years back when I set up Youth for Jobs, I said 30% of my data will be girls with disabilities. It may not happen because of the difficulty of it. But if you have that in front of you, then it'll become 29, 28, and you'll keep inching yourself upwards. Second is, I think in the skilling, you need to include those extra things which a woman needs, like teaching her on control of her body, on what the POSH Act is, on what are the kind of their rights at the workplace. I think these special things have to be included. And finally, you just need to do that last mile linkage to a job or an enterprise. That's really so important. When you do this, I think what happens is that the young girl with disability, she just doesn't look back. And let me just give you an example so that we can celebrate a girl from Bharat with disability. So we had this girl, Kameshwari, an alumni like many others, speech and hearing impaired. Like most families, which happens even in urban area, when she was born, the father ran away. They don't want the responsibility of a disabled child. The mother remarried. She was brought up by an aunt. She studied till 10th with great difficulty. She came to our training center and she was funded by Anna, who's the global head of retail at IKEA. So Anna decided for her birthday, she won't take gifts, but she'll fund some of the girls in our training center. So when Anna came to Hyderabad, she WhatsApped me saying, Meera, I'd like to meet, the girls. Now, Kameshwari, she was just 3 months in her job, which was in the Google Facility Center, Archana. So I was so nervous. I was taking her to this 5-star hotel, okay, with me. But I just didn't have to worry, okay. She asked her very womanly questions. She asked her in sign language, are you married? When she said yes, she asked her, do you have a baby? Then she asked her, does your husband beat you? Because that's what happens, in their lives. And Anna, looked so stunned. And then I explained to her, listen, this is what happens to a lot of rural women, and that's why she's asking you this question. But the point of it was that again and again and again and again, I realized that a job or increased income from an enterprise really is not just economic independence. What it does is that it gives the voiceless a voice. And that is what I think all of us should work towards on the International Women's Day. Let me take a pause.
Thanks, Meera ma'am. What comes to my mind after hearing you is the issues of women across rural, urban, semi-rural remain the same. I can also relate to, a few things that you mentioned. So yes, from that, on that note, where you mentioned that it is important to be the change that we want to see in the world, like Mahatma Gandhi said, and take focused approaches towards increasing the participation of women in skilling and perhaps other areas as well. And I'd like to mention here that through our CSR projects, we are mandating that each project of ours should have at least a 30% participation of women, girls, and people with disabilities. So like you said, it may not happen automatically, it may not happen immediately, but I guess we'll get to that 30% someday. So thanks Meera ma'am, thanks so much. Shweta, yeah, so I'm going to ask you a very reporter kind of a question, because you've been dealing with stats at NDTV, etc. So according to a report, the percentage of funded startups with at least one female co-founder went down from 17% in 2018 to a mere 12% in 2019. What do you think is the reason for this drop? And what are the possible policy level solutions you think are there to increase or sustain these numbers?
Well, thank you so much, Archana, and it's such a pleasure to be on this panel, and a very happy International Women's Day to everybody here and everyone who's listening in. Very quickly to what Manju said, before I come to the specific question, I do want to say that yes, I truly believe that diversity and inclusion needs to be lived every single day. At the same time, I do think that, the kind of fillip that issues around diversity and inclusion get because of this one day which is celebrated, and just the sheer number of conversations, meaningful ideas and initiatives that are brought about because we get incentivized to talk about this subject and take action around it, I think has been wonderful, because this is really a movement that we are seeing around the world. And come March, and we're all talking about this, and even if we feel a small bit of that translates into some meaningful impact, it is totally worthwhile. Now, coming to your specific question, Archana, yes, the numbers are dismal and the numbers are worrisome. The numbers have made each and every one of us in the startup ecosystem, in the venture capital ecosystem, sit up and take notice and say, you know what, we need to do something about this. And there needs to be collective action. There needs to be action across the board, whether it's policy level action, as you were talking about, or it's the industry themselves coming together, to an industry along with the government coming together, and a public-private partnership to make sure that we're seeing much more tangible efforts to make the ecosystem more diverse and inclusive. Let me specifically quickly talk about Sequoia Capital and Sequoia India. We definitely run a program called Sequoia Spark, which is aimed exactly at what you're saying, at trying to solve problems around, making sure that the ecosystem becomes more diverse. There are more women founders. There are more women founders that are building and scaling companies. And here I'd like to mention a specific partnership that we've just stitched together last year. And Ishita would be aware of this. This is along with the Women Entrepreneurship Platform of the Niti Aayog. So, WEP being a very, very vibrant, as well as, large-scale initiative taken at the government level by the country's economic policy think tank, Niti Aayog. We felt that it was absolutely opportune for us as leaders in the venture capital ecosystem to join hands with Women Entrepreneurship Platform. And this is not just merely, something that is being done for the optics of it, or something that is being done because it's a good to have. It is a serious mentorship program that we intend to run with some of our most senior investment advisors, because the one thing that we realized in a survey that we had done, around women founders, to understand what is happening, to answer the first part of your question, which is, why is it that we're not seeing more women founders? Why is it that we're not seeing the ecosystem come up? And I'd like to share some data that I specifically have around what our survey results showed us. And we were told that women highlight fundraising as the topmost issue that stops them from building, scaling companies. So why is it that they're not being able to start up? Why is it they're not being able to sustain and scale their companies? Some of the other issues are, of course, human capital, marketing and branding, product development, sales, and then business partnerships. But fundraising being the bulk of the women said, we face issues around fundraising. So what we've set out to do is bring out an entire mentorship program, run campaigns as well as webinars that would be like a fundraising 101 for women founders to help understand what is fundraising all about, how easy or difficult is it, do you really need to raise funds for your startup, and answer questions like these by people who are really, have extensive tribal knowledge of decades in the startup ecosystem. One other initiative I'd like to touch upon very quickly before I hand back to you is around something that we have just launched, as of 3 days ago, which is called Act for Women. So Act was really a platform which was set up by venture capitalists as well as entrepreneurs in response to coming up with solutions for COVID-19. But as the movement gathered momentum, ACT has now been expanded to include other areas, which includes environment, which includes education. But more importantly, we've also included empowerment for women. And within Act for Women, what the ecosystem, which includes venture capitalists, tech entrepreneurs, founders, have done is a pact, a 5-pronged pact, which will help drive the focus around, gender parity. And I'll quickly read that out in the interest of time. I'll make it very quick. So there are really 5 focus areas that Act for Women is going to focus on. One is making sure that you're creating a startup corporate workplace report this year. So it's something that will quantify and help understand what's going on in the startup ecosystem. Second is mentorship for the Startup Women's Network, providing greater opportunities for college hires through internships and mentorships, and creating a scalable return to work program to bring women back from a career break. And finally, identifying and funding ideas for solving systemic challenges and making it easier. So this, for everybody who's listening in, this is actgrants.in, and you can join in. And this is a pact for gender parity that has just been announced a few days ago. And we're encouraging everybody in the tech ecosystem to come and join this pact. It's a very easy pact talking about a 5-pronged approach, but at least some decisive action towards implementing some form of change. Archana, over to you.
Thanks, Shweta, for pointing it out to us that International Women's Day is giving the fillip that issues of women need that to be addressed in today's day and age. So thank you so much. The panel will continue till 11:35, and after that we have a 10-minute question and answer session. So I request all the attendees to start typing in your questions while we ask the panelists the second round of questions. So Ishita, we are back to you. The second question and closing remarks from your side is, we want to know what are the policy interventions that can provide support to budding entrepreneurs in India.
So, Archana, what I would say is that there are a lot of policy interventions that the government is doing, and they are not only in the area of entrepreneurship and innovation, but the government has taken a very holistic approach to empower the women. So you would have heard of the launch of the Startup India, Stand Up India campaign. Along with that, there was the Mudra scheme that was launched, which enabled the women to take quick loans and easy loans. It is mandatory for listed companies to have a woman director. The maternity leave was increased to 24 weeks. There are various schemes and programs launched for protecting women from crimes and in the interest of their health. So, for example, in the Matru Bandhana Yojana, there is the Suvidha, there is the Women Health Desk, there is the smoke-free kitchens, the smokeless gas burners have been provided. Then the self-help groups movement has been given a fillip by changing the regulations and the norms for creating self-help groups. Abolition of triple talaq happened. There's, of course, the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao movement, which all of these taken together not only encourage women entrepreneurship, but they empower the women, they give her the strength and the confidence that the government is with them. And in most of the government policies, there is in the back of the mind while designing the programs, the policies, it is taken for granted that anything which can support women, that can encourage women, should be actually kept in the forefront and should be brought out, and easy access should be provided to the women citizens of the country to be able to leverage on all these programs and schemes. So finally, I would like to say that, and of course, I mean, this is the government, and there are a host of programs that are there in the private sector and the not-for-profit sector. Like, for example, FICCI has the FICCI Flow. The Head Start Network has a complete, women entrepreneurship related programs. There are so many initiatives in the society to encourage entrepreneurship and innovation in the country. I would say that the things are changing. In fact, very recently, I think Grant Thornton came out with a report that says that the percentage of women in the senior management stood at 39% against the global average of a 31%, which is very representative of the changing times. And so I would say that, yes, there were some disadvantages that women have been facing since a long time, but the things are changing. Everyone is putting in a special effort. So this is a very opportune time for most of the women to come forward. I would not say that it is the glass ceiling that cannot be broken at. I would say that sometimes the floors are very sticky. And therefore, please develop that confidence in you to take forward your dreams, reach out and complete your ambitions. And I would wish all the women and the girls watching us a very best of luck for achieving their dreams and becoming successful. Thank you.
Thanks, Ishita. Your message to all of us that don't worry, the government is there with all the women and girls. It's not difficult to break the glass ceiling. It's just that the floor is sticky. Thank you, Ishita, for that very interesting remark. Okay, Manju, so what are your closing remarks on, what should be the strategic approach to create a CSR initiative which is more gender inclusive?
Right. Thanks, Dr. Archana. I know we are short on time, so I'll keep it brief. I think I've already covered that the first time when I answered that. First, look at it as not just an initiative, but look at it as a strategy and an approach, and look at it long term. And the way to really build it long term is, in a way, align yourself to what the business wants to do. That's the best way to really not just bring your own, just the funds, the CSR fund, but bring the other resources. So let's say if you have a employee volunteering and a mentorship program, if you have a DNI program around Springboard or Women on Break, you can actually take that as a starting point to develop a CSR program, right? It will be simpler and easier to do that. I think the other piece is that please partner with the right kind of organization. You partner with a non-profit on diversity and inclusion whose board has a single woman member, or not even a single person with disability, as is often is the case. So make sure that you're partnering with the right kind of organization. I think Shweta touched on this a little bit. I do believe that research, and especially exercises like social return on investment kind of exercises, are really critical. Impact assessments are a very useful way for you to learn, because you have to remember that a lot of CSR leads may not be from the development sector itself. They may be comms people or HR people who've taken this on as a role, but there's help available, so do that. And I think I would say that one piece that I would definitely say is that there is a difference between women empowerment and gender, in a way, gender change, because gender is more systemic, whereas typically in CSR we tend to be more focused on smaller initiative, girls going to school, maybe ensuring that some women are getting skill, but it's good, and it is somehow the nature of the beast, right? That's how sometimes CSR programs are developed. But keep your eye on what your long-term goal is, because gender requires a systemic thinking. And I think the last piece from my side would be that despite a large organization and an international organization like Microsoft, which is global and really stands behind DNI, and I'm sure many of the people who are listening in are part of such organizations, ultimately it does need one person to bat for the issue, right? Like if you as a CSR lead are not going to be passionate about it, people get it, right? And then you can do everything else and it'll not be the same, because you really have to stand up and talk about it and make sure that everybody is listening in. So I would say do that. Go equip yourself, go learn a little bit more, and you can do it and you'll thoroughly enjoy yourself and love it. The journey will be really wonderful.
Thanks, Manju, for making that prime point. Make good partnerships and be passionate about the work that you do. And I think that's so important. And once we bring passion to the table, I think work gets done the way we want it to. So thanks, Manju, on that. Meera ma'am, as far as people with disabilities are concerned, of course, you mentioned about the challenges that girls are facing, girls with disabilities are facing. Any particular challenges that people with disabilities are facing in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic?
I think in times like COVID, vulnerable communities like disability, and especially girls with disabilities, do have a lot of challenges. In fact, but the point is that how do you create opportunity out of a challenge? For example, all our training centers had closed, but every youth with disability and girls especially told us that in COVID times, what they needed most was the skill training or a job, because they knew that their parents' income would go. And we were wondering how to do it, because all our centers were residential centers. So we decided to launch Youth for Jobs online, and lots and lots of challenges, because the grassroots space, use of technology, low bandwidth, many of them don't have phones. But if you figure these challenges out, I think what happens is something really beautiful happens. Today we are right across the country, including Jammu and Kashmir. We've reached far more number of girls, because girls finish their houseworks in the morning and enroll in the afternoon. And the mothers, are always so supportive of incomes and independence for their girls. So they support and they become our word of mouth ambassadors. I think what COVID has taught us, that use of technology, the right kind of partnerships, as Manju says, and let me reiterate it. And the flip side of it is that there is everything available in abundance now. You want to get the right kind of manpower, you have, because many are out of jobs, even to build your own organization. You want to get the right kind of funding. There are many funder partners I think we have at least 6 new funders after COVID. So I think what we all need to sit and just figure out, and COVID gives you time to reflect because we all are working from home, I think is to see how these crises can be converted to an opportunity for segments like girls with disabilities.
Thanks, Meera ma'am. You're sharing that there is abundance, there is no dearth of opportunities. We just have to make the right choices, perhaps, and find the right opportunities. So thanks, Meera ma'am, for that. Shweta, adding on to what Meera ma'am was saying about technology, what is your take on how we can equip girls with technology, skills with technology, and make them job ready?
Absolutely. I think I'd like to take forward what Meera ji was saying and talk about how technology has actually become a huge leveler, for achieving diversity and inclusion goals. And technology actually makes it so much easier for women to do what they could not say perhaps 5 years ago. I'd like to cite an example of Meesho, which is a social commerce platform, which is a startup backed by Sequoia Capital. And the reason why I personally feel so excited and overjoyed by the Meesho story is because today, as a platform, as a social commerce platform, which we believe is slightly different from the typical e-commerce model, Meesho is today empowering women in India, and about 8 million women in India who are using their mobile handsets to create a social identity, to achieve financial independence, and to be able to use their digital skills of using social media to sell apparel, to sell any goods, mostly apparel. And the kind of revolutionary movement that we're seeing across the board, like tier 2, tier 3 cities, and just the sheer number of women who are taking on and using technology now to attain their goals of, one, achieving a professional identity, and two, achieving financial independence is truly remarkable. And you'd mentioned, in the introduction, I'm also board member of We Hub, which is an incubator of the Telangana government, which has been set up to, promote, again, women entrepreneurship. And we've just announced a tie-up between Meesho and We Hub, again, just as of last week. And I think what's absolutely wonderful is to see these kind of institutions coming together, because what we're creating today is micro entrepreneurs, and these millions of women who are today using technology and tools like social media to achieve to get empowered and to achieve their goals is creating a new wave of micro entrepreneurship, which is all set to change the country. And these are numbers that are already mind-boggling. So I'll pause there, but I do think that there are some very remarkable success stories like Meesho that are all set to change the game dramatically for women in this country.
Thanks, Shweta. I'm going to ask this next question to you because someone from the audience has asked you for the URL of the website that you mentioned. So he says, please share the URL of website of women website as told by Shweta ma'am. So Shweta ma'am, if you please type in the name of the URL in the chat box that you see. It says to everyone. Perhaps you can type it there.
I will type it, and just very quickly for the benefit of everyone listening in, it's called actgrants.in/act for women. I'm also typing it here for everybody. Thank you, Ashna.
Thanks, Shweta. Ishita, the next question is for you. You mentioned, during the time that you were speaking, that there is a 39% statistics of women being in leadership roles in India. So was that India or was it for some other country?
No, that was India, while the global average was around 31%. That's
fantastic.
Yeah, that's
fantastic.
That has come out, I guess, a couple of days back.
So according to your statistics, the women in leadership roles at India stand at 39% as opposed to the women in leadership roles globally at 31%.
Yes.
I think that's an amazing statistics that you've shared today on Women's Day. Thank you so much. Manju, the next question is for you. You mentioned that there is a secret project that you're going to initiate in AI, in the rural areas. The question is that does one need a very high level of qualification to be doing AI level training?
So a fantastic question, and I just want to let whoever has asked this question let them know that the project actually has two verticals. One is going to be AI skilling actually for students who are already doing engineering or STEM, but 50% of the numbers are actually for students who are not even have any STEM background. So they're going to be arts graduates and they're going to be commerce graduates. And this, so while most people think about AI, data science, ML, and they think about, maybe engineering college or maybe IITs, but actually the reality is that AI is going to fuel jobs for everyone. And definitely you don't really need to have any of those higher tech degrees to look at a career option in AI.
Wow. So Manju, are you saying like people, that people like me who do not have an engineering background can do AI jobs and can avail of AI training?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Microsoft itself is hiring a lot of people who are basically from background in sociology and economics to help. So AI models have to be trained and they need all kinds of people for those training. So a lot of people who are leading this work are non-technical people, even at Microsoft.
Great. So can you share where women and others can access this training?
We're still going to, as I said, we're going to launch the program. But what I can actually do is, Dr. Archana, probably we're already doing a lot of AI trainings already with NASSCOM on Skills Prime for students, for a lot of women. I'll share the link to that one. I'll just figure that out and share the link with you on where they can actually avail this training. And when our program gets launched, you'll hear about it.
Great. So thank you so much, everyone, for sparing your valuable time this morning. I enjoyed myself. I'm sure you did too. And the conversations have truly been meaningful and informative, even for a person like me who is in the skilling space and is sitting at NSDC, which is the apex of skilling in India. So thanks once again to everyone. Hope you have a great day. Enjoy yourselves. It is our day today, so we must make the most of it. Of course, Manju said it's our day every day, but yeah, I mean, Shweta said it adds a fillip. It's good to be wished Happy Women's Day wherever you go. So yeah, thank you everyone, and
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye.